For more on this, let's bring in the Shadow Workplace Relations Minister and Shadow Attorney General Mireya Cash, who joins me live from Perth. Mireya Cash, thanks for joining us. I'll get to the IR reforms in a second, but first of all, I wanted your reaction to this appointment of Chris Barrett as Chair of the Productivity Commission. He has worked in a number of jobs. He's been Australia's ambassador to the OECD, but he also worked with Jim Chalmers in Wayne Swan's office. What do you make of it?
Well, the now government made a huge issue of appointments that the former coalition government had made, and they had said to the Australian people that when they were elected to office, they would usher in a new era of transparency. In the majority of their appointments, and in particular when it comes to appointments in my portfolio, I can tell you now, Andrew, I'm failing to see a new era of transparency. It's either someone who is a member of a union, a secretary in a union, or alternatively, as you've said, a person who has worked for a previous Labor member. So all I'd say is this is a government that is very, very good at criticising the former government, but when it comes to the transparency and the integrity, they seem to be falling a little short of the mark.
So you all appoint your mates?
Absolutely not. What I'm saying is this. The government made a huge deal of appointments made by the former coalition government, which I would maintain were made on the basis of qualification and merit, but the government is failing to heed its own words.
All right. Well, Tony Burke on Sunday Agenda, he couldn't have been clearer, could he? He said that he wanted to overturn the High Court decision on casuals in 2021. What do you make of that?
Oh, look, absolutely gobsmacking. And in particular, Tony Burke likes to talk in slogans, he likes to talk through the media, but he fails to talk to the people that matter, and that is the employers. Employees need employers. If you don't have employers, you're not much use to an employee. What is the loophole that Tony Burke says he is trying to close? Because, you see, Andrew, if it's in relation to certainty and fairness, it was the former coalition government, and in fact I was the relevant minister, that for the first time ever legislated a definition of what a casual employee actually is. That is now in the Fair Work Act. So we got rid of all of the confusion that employers had been subjected to for years and years and years. And if you're talking about fairness, again, it was the former coalition government, and I was the minister that legislated for the first time ever a statutory pathway for casual employees after 12 months to convert to permanency. So again, the only thing that I can see that Tony Burke is trying to do is A, fulfil Sally McManus's wish, which she articulated today. Ideally, we wouldn't like to see any casuals. They only want to see permanent employees. But B, to reintroduce the uncertainty that existed before the coalition government legislated, which means that yet again you get into this situation, Andrew, where employers, without knowing, could actually misclassify an employee, and then it opens the employers up to what is referred to as the double dipping, which again the coalition government got rid of.
And he wants to make it 6 months, doesn't he? 6 months you can become permanent.
Oh, look, it's really interesting because, again, this is Tony Burke making announcements through the media. I have spoken to employer group after employer group this morning. Nobody seems to know exactly what Tony Burke wants to do. They can't talk to the media because, as you know, they've been made to sign, I would call them a gag order. They're not allowed to talk about any of the industrial relations reforms. So they get to respond to announcements that are made by Tony Burke in the media. So what we've all gathered so far is what Tony Burke wants to do is to reintroduce into the employment landscape the uncertainty, and it was shocking uncertainty, in relation to the definition of casual that the coalition government for the first time legislated to get rid of. So again, if Tony Burke is talking about closing a loophole, perhaps he'd like to articulate what that loophole is, because there is a definition of casual now in the Fair Work Act, legislated by the former coalition government with me as the minister, and there's already a statutory pathway to permanency for casual employees. So what is Tony Burke actually trying to do?